We are so honored and delighted to have such a robust presentation and program from Compassionate Choices. Welcome to the legal portion of the evening. We'll let people come in and just reflect on the incredible questions of our day and the issues that Compassionate Choices takes on, what the rules should be, the distribution of power between government and the individual, about decision-making, about our own care in the last chapter of life. It's just such a blessing to be able to support the work of this incredible organization. I'm Robert Rabin. I'm a longtime supporter of the organization, an attorney, and just delighted to present to you and engage in a conversation with Kevin Diaz. Kevin is the Chief Legal Advocacy Officer and General Counsel of Compassionate Choices. Kevin, say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Robert. I'm really excited to be here. I was raised in Oregon, so I have a vivid memory of the events we are celebrating tonight and feel very fortunate to be an ambassador for one of Oregon's most forward-thinking accomplishments. When I joined CNC over 8 years ago, I was the sum total of the legal department. Now there are 9 of us, 7 attorneys and 2 support staff, with portfolios that cover policy development, legislative lawyering, and of course, litigation. We cover the gamut of end-of-life issues, including medical aid in dying, advance directives, dementia, religious refusals, and inequities at life's end. Despite the growth, the need is still great, and we are laser focused on meeting the challenge head on.
That's great. We're very lucky to have you, Kevin. I've been a part of this movement for going on 30 years. I worked in Congress, I worked in the Department of Justice, and I've seen incredible growth and incredible sophistication. I've seen relentless attacks from people on what should be a personal decision. But going forward, I've never been more excited. I've never been more optimistic about where we are. We have a relentless focus on person-directed healthcare. We want every single person to have the ability to make her own decision about care. And the legal jobs team is to get out there and defend and protect that ability. No small task. Tell us about the legal program, Kevin, how you got it to be best in class, what your vision is for your team.
Well, we've learned over the years that when asked, most people agree with our mission and want to get involved. One of the things I'm most proud of has been our ability to leverage our resources by bringing on incredibly talented and dedicated pro bono counsel from across the country to help further our work. These partnerships have increased our capacity to look at legal barriers at the end of life broadly, so that people have a real choice at the end of life. You know, so much of our legal system depends on stories being raised up for the courts to consider. Otherwise, it's almost like it never happened. Giving voice to people who are living their last days is at the core of my vision for the work we do in the legal and policy department.
That's so great. Thank you for your leadership and management of that department. Let's turn to something really on a lot of people's minds, but first let's find out how many people know about it. We're going to take a little poll on the bottom right of your screen. There should be a poll, and it's just a yes or no question. Don't have to put a lot of thought into it. Have you heard of what many are calling the Oregon residency case? Yes or no? We'll wait as the tabs come in. It's an interesting issue on the dashboard in front of us, along with so many. It's the Oregon residency matter and case. It's a stunning example of your, Kevin's, dedication. Can you tell us a little more about what's going on and what it is?
Sure. Well, here in Portland, Oregon, we're just across the river from Washington State. Both states have authorized medical aid in dying, yet our plaintiff in the case, Dr. Gideons, was barred from providing medical aid in dying to his patients who are Washington residents. That just didn't make any sense. So we filed the lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the law. Interestingly, this case, which predates the Dobbs case, which overturned Roe v. Wade, involves issues that reproductive justice advocates are now focusing on, namely the right to travel or limit access to certain types of healthcare because of where people live. I was thrilled that we were able to successfully resolve the case so quickly, and I'm appreciative of the serious consideration the Oregon defendants gave our claims. Under the settlement, the Oregon Health Authority is going to propose a permanent legislative fix in the upcoming legislative session, and we are optimistic that it will pass. Unfortunately, though, this sort of barrier exists in almost all of the other jurisdictions where medical aid in dying is explicitly authorized.
Kevin, thank you so much for your work on that. And we'll be watching this closely. And it's a perfect segue to a video that we have put together for you, which we believe to be is very compelling right on this topic. Take a look at a few minutes of the story that brings to light how Compassion and Choices fights for all of us. I'm incredibly honored to engage in a very important conversation with two people who are making a difference. I couldn't be more honored to introduce Linda Bluestein and Amitai Heller. Linda, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us why you're here tonight.
I had been in nursing and in public health in Kentucky. So I supported Right to Die and the Hemlock Society. And then in 1994, in July, my mother died in my arms in a death she never would have wanted. Well, that leaves a pretty strong impression. And then when I had breast cancer, and then I had melanoma, and then I had ovarian cancer, I said, I know where this is going. And I want to be able to get off before I'm at that state where I'm telling my beloveds, I don't want you to see me. I don't even want to see you. So yeah, it's personal. And this lawsuit is so much more than the legal rights. This is me. And I want to know why any legislator thinks that he or she has a right to interfere in what my choices are when cancer has just about had its final act with me and I'm done with it.
Wow. We're poised to hear a lot more from you, but thank you so much for your courage and your leadership. Mr. Heller, you're a part of the amazing legal team at Compassion and Choices. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to this work.
My name is Amitai Heller. I'm a senior staff attorney here at Compassion and Choices. I am part of the team that is working with Linda. I come to the work from a general civil rights background. I was working in the field of disability rights prior to joining Compassion and Choices. Coming to Compassion and Choices has been extremely educational and enriching for me to learn and to think more deeply and to consider all the various issues that go into end of life that a lot of people who aren't having to face these choices are having to deal with on a daily basis and the challenges that they're facing. And I truly think if more people in the civil rights realm knew and understood the stakes and some of the barriers to access that people face at the end of life, they would become a lot more engaged in this movement.
So there's a landmark lawsuit, Bluestein v. Scott. Linda, I don't know if you ever sort of hope to grow up to have a lawsuit named for you, but here we are. Bluestein v. Scott, and it's on behalf of you, Linda, Connecticut resident, and a Vermont physician, Diana Barnard, who specializes in hospice and palliative care. And the suit, if I can, just in sum, it challenges the constitutionality of the residency requirement in the current Vermont medical aid in dying law. So, Amitai, I'll start with you. How did Compassion Choices, how did the legal team decide to pursue this case? I know that you get so many requests all the time. Why this one?
For years, Compassion and Choices has been hearing from people who wanted to access medical aid in dying in bordering states where it was available. Ms. Bluestein, Linda, is just one example of the many people who have reached out to us to say, this isn't right. Why should these other states be allowed to exclude us just because of where we happen to live? And so when we initially brought a suit in Oregon on behalf of a Dr. Nicholas Gideons, which resulted in a successful settlement. After that, we moved forward with Linda's case and with Dr. Barnard's case because we see no justification to prevent this type of access to this really important end-of-life option.
Well, suffering doesn't know boundaries. Linda, I see the Broadway play Chicago behind you. I'm hoping that you were a hoofer, you were Roxy Hart. But what's it like to be in the spotlight? Do people sort of reach out and say, "How dare you," or "You go, girl," or what?
More of the "you go, girl." Some people have written me, especially from Vermont, when the lawsuit, when the PR came out, they said, "Oh, why don't you just move, lady?" And I've had people ask me the question on radio, "Why don't you just move and leave the law out of it?" And I said, "Well, when did you last move?" I moved 10 years ago, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It's exhausting to take 20 years, 40 years of a household and try to relocate, and then everything's uncertain. But to do it when you're so sick, and we've already been admitted to hospice, now let's move a household. Now let's go reestablish residence in a new town that you don't know, with strangers who are not your neighbors, not your friends. You lose your support network. That's why Vermont is closer for me. I would rather stay in Connecticut, absolutely, but at least I can get there in a day. And we have gone to Vermont, and we love Vermont. So I said, that's where I want to go when this gets to be too much.
Oof. God bless you. God bless you for your journey. Much for that. I mean, Tara, what's it been like as a lawyer to work with Linda?
I just so deeply admire anyone who so believes in what's right and wrong, who takes their final months or years of life to just dedicate it to not just herself. This is about everyone else too. This is about her friends. This is about her community. This is about people she doesn't know and their rights to be able to access healthcare across state lines. And I find it very inspiring and moving to be able to represent people like this, even though the actual legal questions themselves are about things like privileges and immunities clause, interstate commerce, things like, that are might be very dry on the surface, like the way that we can kind of harness this dryness and use it to impact the lives of others is very powerful and can't be done without people like Linda willing to step up during moments like this when there is a need. And so I'm grateful, and I feel, very appreciative and inspired by Linda's efforts.
What's sort of the one thing that you want people to know who are struggling with how they should support medical aid in dying, how they should be involved in compassionate choices?
Everyone has their own specific skill set, and there's a place for everyone in the movement. If you're an attorney, I'm sure we could use your help. If you have a legal issue that's pressing, we'd love to hear about it to see if there's anything we could do to support you at the end of life. But really just showing up, I think, is in my opinion, showing up and contributing what you have to offer is really what I think is essential. And that's going to look different for everyone.
And I would answer that, what I like people to know about working with an organization like Compassionate Choices is speak up. Enough of us have had the experience of having a bad death and know that the common thread in so many people at the end stage of their disease or their lives is, I would like to just go to sleep and not wake up. And it gives me such comfort to know that can be my choice too, that I don't have to prolong that the final days after cancer's had its final say with me. I'd like to say when, not my disease.
Thank you so much. This has been powerful as we predicted that it would be. And thank you for your leadership individually and together in a team that hopefully will make a historic change in law that will allow eventually thousands of people around the country to avail themselves of a better death, which is something we all deserve. Wow, people need to take a breath after something so powerful to meet up close the men and women who put themselves out there and work with attorneys like you, Kevin, to make the fundamental change that makes this country great. How does it make, I'll get back to the legal stuff in a second, but sort of on the more personal, what's it like to work so closely with people like Ms. Bluestein?
Well, Compassionate Choices has just been blessed by having some of the best clients and the best advocates work together towards our common goal. I really feel like if people could really get to know our clients and their stories, which is something we try to do, that we're going to win them over no matter what, because they're just salt of the earth, and it's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see the people we're fighting with and for. So you've grown a very significant legal department. Tell us sort of how is it connected to the mission? What's the impact of the legal work?
Well, here at CNC, we really practice integrated advocacy. And what that means for the legal program is when we develop a new legislative concept or consider taking on new court challenges, we think about how that will affect the other pieces of the puzzle, regardless of the outcome of the effort. So if our advocacy and outreach department passes a law, we have to be prepared to defend it from likely challenges. And if we win a lawsuit, we have to be prepared for potential legislative backlash. And as we do all of this, we also need to constantly be thinking about how our efforts are changing the conversation to one not about death, but to one that focuses on healthcare that lets each person live their last days to the fullest. It is something that we're uniquely poised to do, as we are the only national organization that has programmatic activity on all three fronts.
So, absolutely, and our issue is sort of salient to many people, but there's an issue that gets a lot more attention also on healthcare, which is reproductive rights, abortion. It's in the news for understandable reasons. Are we a part of that story? How are we a part of that story?
Yeah, we are. When the issues are obviously connected, there's no doubt about that. It's one of the reasons why we brought in reproductive justice organizations into an effort we had in Idaho in challenging the pregnancy exclusions and advanced directives. And my guess is that there are going to be additional and continued collaborative efforts between Compassionate Choices and other groups wherever our goals align. I certainly see the issues related to reproductive rights as one where that's going to take place.
Absolutely. What are some of the threats that you see on the legal front?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is one that a lot of different groups are facing, which is the religious exemptions or religious refusals, where we see people who are making claims that I think most people would find pretty offensive. And as they try to control decisions for others at the end of life, for example, refusing to transfer medical records or make routine charting entries on a patient record.
And I'll ask you as we come to a close here. Well, first I'm going to ask you a sort of an emotional question. What are you excited about?
I'm excited about the opportunities that we have interpreting state constitutions. I think it's an area that's going to really expand because of the current climate.
It's neither liberal nor conservative. It's really particular to a state constitution. And then what do we need people to know? You've got a tremendous audience here. What do we need them to know? What do we need them to do?
You heard it during the short video, but they need to speak up and be heard. And if you see or experience something that doesn't seem right, let us know about it. Reach out and we'll get back to you.
How do they find us?
You can go to compassionatechoices.org.
Awesome. Kevin Diaz, you are doing the Lord's work. You are making an incredible difference, both your head and your heart, and your head devoted to real legal talent, analysis, creativity, pushing us where we need to go so that this freedom can be established and understood and enjoyed by all competent adults. So God bless you, man. I appreciate you. We're going to invite people to go back into the main room. And thank you very much for talking with the legal nerds.
Thank you.